Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I think the button should work now. Okay, good morning. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 24th, 2021. Time for another show. Time for another installment of Thanksgiving week. The continuing saga of us making progress towards tomorrow, at which point we'll make no progress, I assume. But everything is on the level and okay for today. You know, a little bit... I don't know, discombobulated this morning. All the normal morning rush that gets things on track and makes them move, impels you towards the show, have disappeared today because the schools are closed, because it's travel day for Thanksgiving. So, little off, but I think we can make a show work today. And everything should be okay on the Greg front as well. Got some things to take care of, errands later on. Thought we might lose him a little early today, but it sounds like it'll be right on schedule. Everything functioning as normally for you to get up and, prepare for your Thanksgiving. Are you leaving? Are you going anywhere? Are you staying home? Are you staying away from others? Are you fully vaccinated? All those important questions that you got to evaluate for the day. And, we'll get a chance to run through the answers with you if you want to study up for the big test. Okay, let's see. What's happening this morning? Bill tweets us already. Let's make sure we get that out and distributed. Sometimes I forget that. But the Kagro in the Morning radio show is live now. Kagro X, that's me. Hi, how are you? Welcomes you. That's you. Hi. How are you? How am I? I don't know what you ask after something like that. Okay, let's see. Welcomes you, I think this is correct, to Eastern Orthodox Thanksgiving Eve. That's true, right? I think I'll go along with that one. Help yourself to the chips and dip. It's a party. Unless, of course, somehow, I don't know if there are any dietary restrictions for Eastern Orthodoxy. I don't know of any. I don't think so. But you always want to check when you're dealing with religion people and annoying them with repeated joking references to their chosen religion. Yikes. Gee whiz. All right, well, anyway... We should be ready to roll here today. Everything appears to be working, and the switches are on. That's all good. I guess besides this, outside of here, I'm not certain how well everything is actually working. But, things are happening out there, including the circulation on Twitter today of a photograph of Donald Trump with Kyle Rittenhouse at Mar-a-Lago. I don't know if you really want to bring 18-year-old kids down to Mar-a-Lago. They're a little old, honestly, to be running around at Mar-a-Lago. But so is Donald Trump, for that matter. So I guess it all works out in the end. All right, lots to catch up on. Plenty of things to talk about today. Well, I just saw a flyby here from Stephen Dennis on Twitter. I caught my eye and I want to read it here. What is this? So it's a thread of some kind. He's talking about the coronavirus pandemic. And let's see, what's going on here? Over 175,000 Americans died from COVID, the vast majority of them unvaccinated, since Representative Jim Jordan told, who is this, Taylor Populars? I don't know who that is, but it's included here on Twitter. So we'll take a look at it in just a second here. Since he told this person that he was not vaxxed, Jim Jordan that is, and that the country is ready to move on and we're done with this. Jordan now says he got COVID this summer. So that's, I guess, the new revelation. I don't think we knew that, but I'm appreciative to Stephen Dennis for keeping tabs on these things. As you know, I have kept a running tabulation of people who have caught COVID and who have died from COVID since Donald Trump announced that he had found the miracle cure to COVID and was going to give it to everybody for free and mobilize the military to do it. So just wanted to kind of keep track with somebody else keeping source. So 175,000 more dead since Jim Jordan said, hey, don't worry about it, and then got COVID himself. And I think I forget the number that we're at now, but we're well over, I think over 550,000 people have died since Donald Trump said he knew what the cure was. So I found that a little bit curious. 574,613 Americans, as a matter of fact, since Trump said he had the cure and was ready to bring it to you. 40 million additional cases diagnosed since then, heading to 41 million. And by the way, we should, if it wasn't for the holiday disruption over the next couple of days in terms of reporting cases, when health offices will be closed, I would say no avoiding topping 800,000 dead, according to Worldometers, this week. But, well, they weren't all dead this week, of course. I mean, we're going to reach our cumulative there. All right, we better get rolling with Greg because he's got limited time today because it's a day and he has a schedule. That's the way things work. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning. So, sticking with Worldometers, there's some interesting stuff there that I think is well worth talking about. So we're going to spend the first segment talking a little bit about the pandemic, at least as far as until I run out of stuff.
Yeah, all right, I'm up for that.
So Worldometers notes that there have been 48.8 million coronavirus cases in the United States.
Yes.
Okay, and we're closing in on 800,000 deaths.
That's, yeah.
796,319 to be precise. Okay, that's 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Recovered, though. Here's the important thing that we don't talk about enough.
Okay, good. Yeah, let's do that one.
The recovered cases are 38,709,000.
Okay.
Okay. And of the cases,
yes,
which had an outcome, 98% of them recovered or were discharged. Now, a lot of them have long COVID. Some of them are not completely well. But 98% survived, and 2% died.
Yeah.
So now you have enough stats around so that we could say, okay, well, 2% chance of dying if you get COVID, and obviously that depends upon your age and pre-existing conditions and what part of the country you're at and whether or not you've been vaccinated, a whole bunch of other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, those are large numbers,
yes.
38,709. And I will tell you why that is important. And that is because there's a relatively brilliant set of tweets and threads on the pandemic to share with you today. And the first one is from Epi Ellie, who is, as you might guess, an epidemiologist, Ellie Murray.
Yes, okay.
And she starts by putting all of this in perspective. Everybody keeps talking about COVID becoming endemic, but as I listen to the conversation, it's becoming more and more clear to me that very few of you know what endemic means.
Oh, I do not.
So here's a thread on how pandemics end.
Okay.
And the reason I'm doing this is that if you look at the Worldometers data for the United States, look at the 7-day moving average, which is the best way to look at it because it kind of smooths out, I didn't report yesterday, but I got 2 days worth I reported today, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Okay. What you're seeing is a fifth wave in the United States, which at this moment is at a plateau.
Plateau. Fifth
it's
wave.
Flat.
Okay.
And it went down a little bit since the fourth wave, which wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
And now it crept up a little bit, but it's basically at a plateau pre-Thanksgiving. Now, Thanksgiving travel may add to that. We don't know that yet. But my point is, because it's at a plateau, and because our news media are the way they are, you will see both sensational stories about spike in coronavirus in the United States, and as the coronavirus is waning, stupid people are still being too cautious.
Stupid people too cautious. Really? Okay.
I mean, I saw ABC News. With the pandemic waning, it's not waning. Okay. With the pandemic waning, why are congressional House representatives voting not in person?
Because they can.
Because they can, and it's a good idea. And besides, it's not waning. Every part of that story concept was wrong. Every frame was incorrect.
Wow, what do you know? That's weird. I wish we could depend on our media to tell us how to live.
I'm just telling you, when you hear in the media that it's waning or it's spiking, look local.
Yes, that's where you'll get it, by the way.
Yeah, that's where you'll get it, but also that's where you'll understand what's going on. Yeah. So for that reason, actually, I took a quick look at Connecticut this morning, and, pretty fascinating stuff before we get back to Epi Ellie and to explain why we're seeing what we're seeing. But in Connecticut, and today the maps are working on Skype for some reason. On Monday they weren't. But on Skype, I sent you a map of the hotspots in Connecticut by town.
Yeah.
It's useful in Connecticut to look by town, not by county, because we have a lot of small towns, 169 some odd towns, and counties are non-functioning political entities anyway.
Okay.
There's no county DA, there's no county commissioner that's of any value. Everything is by town and region. So
yes, that's a southern thing, counties.
Yeah. Well, New York also.
And they have them, but you don't use them.
New York it works. In Connecticut, looking at the towns, I had 3 pictures which you could look at together. One is where the hotspots are. The second is the 2020 presidential vote. And the third is the percent of population all ages who have had at least one dose of COVID-19 vaccination. And they all correlate. If you're in a Trumpy part of town, you won't get vaccinated, and that means that you're going to be in a hotspot.
Yeah.
Pretty clear.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Okay. And the worst towns for Trump and the worst towns for vaccination are also the worst towns for where the hotspots are. Now, it's not a one-to-one correlation, but it's pretty solid, which you can see looking at the map.
Okay.
So what do we learn from that? Well, there's another piece that's of interest. The map about vaccinations notes at least one dose. A little misleading in the following sense. Connecticut actually led the country in terms of the number of people that at the time were considered fully vaccinated, which is, say, 2 shots or 1 shot if you're J&J. It's over 70% of eligible people got it. But we're lagging. We're only in the middle of the country in regard to boosters.
All right.
And you'll see in a moment why that's important. So file that in your head, okay?
Why it's important.
It's important to know why the virus is still around and that, no, it's not gone and not necessarily spiking, although we'll have to wait and see after Thanksgiving, and also why it's important to have your booster and Jim Jordan notwithstanding. If he had COVID, he still needs to get vaccinated.
Okay.
We'll see why. So it's good that you brought that up. So Ellie Epi says,
jab them now.
Look, Ellie Epi.
Yes, right.
Ellie Murray.
We had a deli called Epizessen near me, which
Oh, yeah? Good.
this is now reminding me of. Yes, go on.
My favorite was an L.A. Arts Deli where every sandwich is a work of art. So everyone keeps talking about COVID becoming endemic, but as I listen to the conversation, it's becoming more and more clear. Very few of you know what endemic means. So in the beginning of any pandemic, we have 4 options for what could happen. 4 options. 1, continually occurring disease with small or large surges.
Yeah, all right.
Like flu. Okay?
Yeah.
Local elimination of disease.
Well, yeah.
Like measles.
Awesome. Well, once anyway.
Global eradication of disease. Like smallpox.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, polio.
Yeah. Good job.
Okay? Complete extinction of the pathogen.
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't happen.
Oh, well, all right. Like
the
things
best we
that were
get is
frozen in
global
the
eradication. And for the most part, we're okay with local elimination of disease.
Yeah,
that is to say, we're okay with, how they do things with measles. Get your vaccine and occasional outbreaks in Disneyland, but except for that, we're okay.
Yeah, we just got sued.
Right?
Go on.
And we're certainly okay with continually occurring disease with small or large surges like flu if it turns out that, the risk isn't all that great.
Less death.
If it turns out the risk is great, then you don't get satisfied and complacent with continually occurring disease with small or large surges. So, option 4, extinction, is absolutely the hardest.
Yeah.
But would mean we can completely forget about the disease. We've basically never done this in the entire history of humans.
Yeah. We have forgotten about diseases, but
we could.
Not because it went away.
We could, but we haven't.
Okay.
Right?
We'll
smallpox could fit in there, but it doesn't. And part of the reason smallpox doesn't fit in there is because we don't trust each other.
Yeah.
So we still have to have some in the super labs just in case the Russians and the Chinese and the next country who isn't on the map yet does something or something else.
We haven't eliminated it because you haven't eliminated it.
Right. Option 3, which is eradication, global eradication, is very hard, but long term, just about everybody could forget about disease, smallpox. Okay. Option 2, elimination, still pretty hard. And long term, not everybody can forget about the disease, and for a lot of the world, measles is still a problem. And now we get to option 1, continually occurring disease. This is easier short term, but it's the hardest long term. It's also super vague. It could mean anything from hundreds or thousands per day to 1 or 2 per year. like plague.
Oh.
In Arizona.
Yeah, it does happen.
The prairie dogs get plague, and every once in a while a human gets it. And it's been around since the Middle Ages. And do you care? No.
Yeah, well, generally.
Right. The other name for this, a super vague, continually occurring disease, another name for that is endemic.
Okay.
So in more technical terms, endemic means controlled at or below an acceptable level.
I see.
And what's a level that's acceptable? Well, that differs from place to place, between this time and another time, and between diseases. And it may not always be explicit, but when a disease is endemic, there's a threshold you're measuring it against.
Okay.
If a disease is really bad, then acceptable is very low.
Okay.
And maybe really even bad. Elimination is what you're looking for. If it's like super bad,
right,
like plague.
Gotcha. Right.
On the other hand, if a disease is not really that bad, the acceptable level can be really high, like flu, which people take way too unseriously. But nonetheless, nobody, totally freaks out about it. Even a bad flu season, it'll get covered, but that's about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, here's another example. Up to 80% of U.S. adults are infected by the virus that causes cold sores.
Okay.
Right? Which is medically known as oral herpes and sounds a lot more disgusting. But it's a cold sore.
You'll have herpes. Yeah.
Okay. But public health takes no action.
Right.
Except to protect infants.
Oh.
Because nobody cares, because it's not that serious.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
right?
Generally speaking, you just think it's...
So, you might have noticed something important here, she says, and it's something I think many of the people shrugging off COVID becoming endemic get completely wrong. Endemic does not mean harmless.
Okay.
Whether a disease is endemic, epidemic, eliminated, or eradicated doesn't tell us how serious it is. It doesn't tell us how many people get sick and die. We have to choose that number. That's where the whole concept of thresholds come in.
Okay. I can understand that.
Right? So endemic doesn't mean you don't have to ever think about COVID again. It's the exact opposite. Endemic means something's always
you'll probably get
something to worry about.
Yeah. It's interesting that they would get associated with not a problem, but for the other reason. Not because you won't get it, but because you will, and it's not a big deal.
Right. Endemic means public health is always monitoring disease and always intervening when cases cross the acceptable level. What about salmonella in chicken?
Right.
Well, you get one,
delicious,
fine. But if you see a trend, public health's going to intervene, shut the factory down. Same with bacterial infection of lettuce or whatever the latest public health scare was.
Poop cruises.
There is there's a level at which it's acceptable, and then if it's above that, then they intervene. So you never stop thinking about it. Public health never stops thinking about it. But the public, if it's bad, is also never going to stop thinking about it. A more extreme example, perhaps, was the 1950s, very early 1960s polio.
Yes.
If you were a parent, you didn't stop thinking about it, not until the vaccine came out.
Right. I can imagine. Why would you?
Because everybody knew somebody. Somebody on your block had a kid, who was wearing a brace.
Yeah.
I'm old enough so that happened with me. When I was 5 or 6, there were at least 2 kids on my block in Brooklyn who, wearing a brace, older kids.
Yeah. It was everywhere. And I think the numbers were probably lower than what we're dealing with here, but...
Right. So Ellie Epi says, every time I tweet about this, I get people in mentions saying, yes, but we don't take precautions about flu. And these people are 100% wrong.
Yeah,
Thousands of people work daily to monitor, prepare for, and respond to fluctuations in flu number and in the flu virus itself. A huge task. That's why we were working on pandemics 10 years ago, 15 years ago with CDC and HHS and, had the whole thing about bird flu. A lot of people worry about this. You never stop worrying about something like that. And maybe the flu doesn't impact your life, except some years you get the flu shot, or maybe you had actual flu, not just a bad cold. Because if you don't feel like you've been hit by a train, it's probably not the flu.
Right. And it's just plain wrong that regular people don't spend their time worrying about it or aren't impacted by it. They forget, be treated as local stories.
She makes the point. Why is it that regular people forget and don't spend enough time, or don't spend a lot of time thinking about it? Because public health knows what it's doing.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
There's clearly defined acceptable levels. We spend so much time and energy and money working to keep it below those levels. You don't get sick, so you don't worry about it. That doesn't mean it went away. It's endemic but not harmless.
That is a
If
great
you didn't do
point.
anything about it, the hospitals would be overwhelmed with flu cases, and flu is way more mild than COVID.
That's true. So, hey, next time you're thinking about assassinating your local health official, don't.
Right. So, not because it isn't happening, but it's because the acceptable level is low enough so that the actions happen before it impacts your daily life. So, public health does their job, and so you don't get impacted, so that's all good. So, if you work somewhere like daycare or a nursing home or a school of public health like Epi, that shares a campus with a hospital, you do notice. Because those are places where flu is most problematic, and so they're also where we focus our interventions. So when I was working at a hospital, when I wasn't retired, I was on the hospital task force to make sure everybody was vaccinated. Because it was something worth spending our time, and they paid me to do that.
Wow.
So that you didn't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And sure, we got into fights about whether vaccine should be mandatory or not mandatory. But the point is people were working on it. And because they were working on it, the hospitals never got overwhelmed with flu, regardless of the outcome of the argument.
Well, all right.
What does this tell us about how pandemics end? Well, it tells us we can put in the work to really get rid of it if we have the will and the strength, and we don't.
Yeah.
Okay? And it gets harder and harder the longer we wait. Smallpox was around for a very long time before we took action, and it took a long time to get rid of. Polio eradication is long overdue. We're still trying. We'll get there, but there are certain countries who make up stories about the people bringing vaccinations, and then they try to kill them, and so it doesn't get done. Eradication's hard, but we could still choose to make it our moonshot if we wanted to. And New Zealand probably came closest.
All right. Well,
with their advantages.
Congratulations.
It's an island.
Congratulations.
Iceland, places like that can ban outside horses. You can do stuff. We don't have the political or social will to eliminate or eradicate COVID, but that means we have to continue to control it, and that's the only option. That's what endemic means. It means setting a threshold for something you can't get rid of so you can bring it below that threshold so that you don't have to worry, but it does not mean that it's harmless.
All right.
Hope I made the point. I think it was a
I think so. Oh, it was a good point, and well put. Now I have a fuller understanding of it, certainly, and yeah, it's amazing, and when it's a great reminder too of, like you said, of how many people are actually working on keeping flu acceptable, such that you end up with a guy like the former guy saying things at the outset of this pandemic, like, "Hey, who even cares? Like flu, we think of that as nothing, but 60,000 people can die from it, so therefore it's nothing." But yeah, people think of the flu as something oh no, I sneezed a lot, and I'll go get some Theraflu, and I'll stay home. But by the way. You stay home. Wow, what is that? Lockdown? What tyranny? Holy mackerel. We deal with this stuff all the time. Schools occasionally, locally, schools will close. They quarantine people with flu with fair frequency. Whole department stores in small-town Alabama will shut down for the flu, as it turns out. If you watch the documentary My Cousin Vinny, we deal with this all the time, and we just forget because it works. That's why you forget about it.
Yeah, and Fox News isn't making a big deal of it. So this is going to spill over into the second part of the segment here.
Okay.
After the break, which is coming up, but we still have a few minutes. Yeah. So let me set it up. This is AP, Associated Press.
Oh.
Germany faces grim COVID milestone with leadership in flux. Now remember, we're at a plateau.
Yes.
Okay. The UK is actually doing fairly well at the moment. And that's going to be the topic that I dwell on.
For them.
And Germany is exploding.
Well.
And so is the Netherlands. And other countries in Europe are also having issues. Germany is poised to pass the mark of 100,000 deaths from COVID, a somber milestone that several of its neighbors crossed months ago, but which Western Europe's most populous nation had hoped to avoid. Discipline, a robust health care system, and the rollout of multiple vaccines, one of them homegrown. That's the Moderna.
Is that okay?
BioNTech.
German.
Discipline, I think it was Moderna. I'm getting confused because there's so many of them.
Okay.
Oxford, AstraZeneca was English homegrown, and at least part of the vaccine development was German. Discipline, a robust healthcare system. Wow. Talk about Germany here. The rollout of multiple vaccines, one of them homegrown, were meant to stave off a winter surge of the kind that hit Germany last year. And no, Germany is not robotic. You can't just tell them what to do and they do it because the vaccine levels aren't anywhere near where they should be.
Right.
In practice, Germans face a confusing array of pandemic rules, lax enforcement, and a national election, followed by drawn-out government transition during which senior politicians dangled the prospect of further lifting restrictions even as infection rate rose. They had an election, and one of the ways you win elections is say, well, if I'm elected, we'll make things a lot easier because we'll be South Texas and Republicans, and we'll get you to vote for us by promising that we won't be, so draconian.
Yes.
Nobody had the guts to take the lead and announce unpopular measures, said Uwe Janssens, who heads the intensive care department at the St. Antonius Hospital in Eschweiler, west of Cologne. This lack of leadership is the reason we are here now.
Right.
Doctors like Janssens are bracing for an influx of coronavirus patients.
Oh, no.
I think his name is Lothar Weiler.
Lothar, yes.
The head of the German CDC had talked about the fact that they're in serious up the creek without a paddle situations. Some German politicians are suggesting it's time to consider a vaccine mandate, describing what's going on in Germany and how bad things are and going to get worse. And then after the break, we'll talk about why and how do they look compared to the UK and what does that say about the United States.
Yeah.
That's where we're going with this.
Okay.
So some German politicians are suggesting it's time to consider a vaccine mandate either for specific professions or for the population as a whole. Austria took that step last week. COVID shots will become compulsory for all starting in February.
Okay.
After seeing a similar reluctance to get vaccinated fuel fresh outbreaks and hospitalizations. That's why we're looking at Connecticut and which towns are vaccinated and which aren't, and where the outbreaks are.
Yeah. Well, you need to know in order to get your programs up and running in the right places first. Huh.
Right.
Well,
so Germany's in that situation, and we'll talk about what that means after the break.
Yeah, and keep a close eye on their mandate and how many people in Germany go out and accuse the authorities of being Nazis. I imagine it will be far fewer, even though they have better cause, perhaps, to do so.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Net Roots Radio. We're back because we're endemic. I think I understand that now correctly, but most people don't think it's such a big deal. So let us go on.
Well, for the most part, we're under control, but every once in a while we surge and they have to do something.
Right, okay. So where were we? Yes, we were...
So we're going to look at John Byrne Murdoch, who writes for the Financial Times.
All right. Yes, got it.
And has a pretty interesting thread about what's going on with Europe versus the United Kingdom and what that means for us. All right. And remember, I asked you to keep in mind that some, close to 40 million people have had COVID here, including Jim Jordan.
Right.
So John Byrne Murdoch writes, new detailed thread on Europe's winter wave and the contrast versus the United Kingdom. What's happening? Why the difference? Can boosters help? First, the wave itself. Cases, hospitalizations, and deaths are surging in Europe.
All right.
And several countries are shooting way past the United States. If you look at COVID cases and deaths, right, the daily cases per 100,000 people, at the top of the chart is Slovakia.
Yes.
Followed by Austria, the Czech Republic, Belgium, the Netherlands. Way, way, way ahead of the United Kingdom. And Germany is just as bad as it is, and I just described how they're really upset about how things are going there.
Mm-hmm.
Germany is just catching up with the United Kingdom now in terms of daily cases per 100,000. But it's half or a third of the cases you're seeing in Slovakia, Czech Republic, Austria.
Yes.
Netherlands and Belgium are much, much higher than Germany. And remember, Eastern Germany, former East Germany,
yes.
When you border on East European countries, you are subject to, what's going on there. Connecticut isn't in a vacuum. It's not an island. The Connecticut cases are going to depend upon New York City, which, by the way, is doing really well right now, staying flat, and Boston, because people travel in between and they stop off in Connecticut for lunch, So, and some people live here and work there, depending upon what part of the state you're in.
Apparently, Rhode Island is where everybody goes to get the disease and hang out with it, because we've never been able to flatten Rhode Island.
Well, if you're going to be able to eliminate it anywhere, Rhode Island's small enough to at least do that. But it's, one large family in Rhode Island. So, you know how families are.
Okay.
So anyway, we're talking about Slovakia, Czech Republic, Austria, daily cases, ICU patients per 100,000 at the top of the list. Czech Republic, Austria, Belgium, Slovakia, and Germany.
Yeah.
Way above the United Kingdom. France, Italy, Spain, UK doing great.
Okay, yeah.
Daily deaths per million. For a long time, the UK was the standard that you measure everybody by. Remember, you have to have a threshold for when to worry. In this particular case, daily deaths per million, the UK is that standard.
Okay.
2 deaths per million, and below that, you're doing okay, and above that, not so much. Germany's exactly there, and they're worried about what happens next. Slovakia and the Czech Republic are up to like 8 or 10, so 5 times worse.
Yeah.
So clearly, parts of Europe are doing way, way worse than the United Kingdom. All right? And the situation's even clearer if you plot it on a log scale. UK's broadly a flat line. European countries are cutting steeply through it. France, Italy, and Spain are all on course to pass the UK for cases. And Germany now is above the United Kingdom for daily deaths, and the Netherlands is set to follow. So a lot of people died in the UK early on compared to the rest of Europe. Or if you consider the UK part of Europe. And why these are exponential surges across Europe but not the United Kingdom? There's little difference in social mixing. The behavior is the same. The non-pharmaceutical interventions are the same.
Yeah.
And if you're going to see a difference in mask wearing, people are more likely to wear masks in Germany than they are in the United Kingdom. We've always commented on the fact that people flying from New York to London put a mask on in New York, and they don't really see a lot of masks in London. Okay. And the answer is the United Kingdom's July reopening, which was political, led to much more of its population being infected than elsewhere in the Western Europe. Between vaccination and infection-acquired immunity, the United Kingdom has more protection, and Europe has a lot more susceptible people. By a lot.
Yes.
Okay. And despite the United Kingdom having lower vax coverage than, for example, Belgium or France, the difference in share of people previously infected is much larger. UK 30%, France 15%, meaning that going into the winter, the UK had fewer people still exposed to the virus. So there was less scope for a wave of hospitalization. And this filled gaps in the UK's vax coverage, leaving very few completely unprotected. But in Germany, lower vax rates and less infection meant far more ongoing exposure.
More low-hanging fruit for the virus. Okay.
Right. Romania had huge numbers of past infections, but huge gaps in elderly vax coverage, huge exposure. Okay. So you get that infection-acquired immunity to a certain extent, and that's why Jim Jordan having had the virus is an important data point. But it comes at a grim cost. The UK has recorded more than 15,000 new COVID deaths since reopening on July 19th, and that's more over that period than any European country except Romania. Okay. The big question is, how does that number compare once winter is done? In July, the United Kingdom's running toll was highest in Europe, and since then, a lot of countries have passed them. Slovenia, Greece, Latvia, Romania, and the others are catching up. Okay. And will the United Kingdom's Western European peers pass that toll, or could they still avoid the worst? A big part of the answer is boosters. Tony Fauci's right. where we now have extremely clear signals in the United Kingdom, look at England. In the first half of October, all of the age group were rising. Mm-hmm. November, a month later, cases have risen among under 60 and fallen among older groups. Not just stabilized, but fallen. Why? Older groups got their booster. Mm-hmm. Nothing else changed.
Okay.
You could look at two mini waves, first half of October and middle of November. In the first half of October, everybody was getting sick. And by November, if you were over 60, you were dropping off the chart. You weren't getting sick at all.
Yeah.
Everybody who was getting sick, and we said this before, the wave in November for England was under 20, the group that they didn't push vaccination on.
Yeah.
Under 20. That's unusual. Right. Usually it's the 30 to 50-year-olds. But they don't vaccinate kids the way we do here.
Okay. Well,
and if you thought that was impressive, take a look at the same thing for hospital admissions. Admissions in England have been relatively stable among people 18 to 64, but they're falling precipitously in the mostly boosted over 65. So to reiterate, cases among under 60s in England have risen, and mostly boosted elderly, they've fallen. Strong evidence that with a fast rollout, boosters can change the slope of a wave, especially for severe outcomes. That's where it becomes relevant here. Jim Jordan has been stricken with the illness and recovered, but he's not as fully vaccinated as somebody who gets vaccinated after you get the illness. In fact, there's some striking data showing that you don't get anywhere near the benefit of protection from having been infected and not get a booster compared to been infected and then get a vaccine afterwards. It's much better to get the vaccine afterwards. But you still get some level of protection from being infected, and that's why the fact that in the U.S., 40 million people almost have had the infection and survived, 98% of them.
Yeah.
And so that's important. And you do get some level, and that's hopeful in terms of why we're at a plateau and we're not spiking. But it's not enough to lower you below the plateau until or unless you get your booster.
Yeah. Well, all right. Everybody ought to get on it. Jeez.
So good reason to think with fast booster rollouts, Western European countries should see cases begin to flatten and fall among the most vulnerable, John Byrne writes. A steep rise in cases no longer necessarily translates into a steep rise in hospitalization and death. But boosters can only help those who've already had 2 doses. In many countries, that number is still too low. And in the U.S., we're still worried about people who haven't been vaccinated at all, particularly in pockets. And that's why, for example, the Connecticut story I told you earlier about what town and whether you've been vaccinated will tell you what risk you're at. So there's a stark warning here for the U.S., too. While the U.S.'s summer wave will have, like the U.K., generated a lot of infection-acquired immunity, that's offset by very poor vaccination rates, both second doses and third doses. Okay? And one key tool for accelerating uptake could be to do what some people have suggested. We should stop calling them boosters and start calling them third doses.
Oh, okay.
Right? We said this, your full vaccination is 3 doses, or 2 if it's J&J plus one of the mRNA vaccines.
Okay.
So you're not fully vaccinated till you've had your 3 shots. So to conclude, the UK's July reopening likely generated enough infection-acquired immunity to shield it from the continent's winter wave, but that came at a cost of thousands of deaths, and boosters are also key to the UK's current successes. Those are lessons we should learn here.
Or they should learn
there. And if Western European countries can accelerate boosters, they'll do okay, but some like Austria are hamstrung by low uptake of the primary course. You can't boost until you get your first shot.
Right. But you can pretend your third shot is your first, or your first is your third.
Well, the 3 shots are your primary series.
Yeah, all right. Go get a shot. Don't tell them it's your first if you don't want to. But
so hopefully that'll give your listeners a pretty good idea of where we're at. Things don't look grim in the U.S. the way they do in Germany. Things look maybe a little bit more like the U.K., but it's all dependent upon getting those boosters and getting those shots out. And we have them, and there's no reason why you can't take advantage. Plus, we're going to see something of a surge post-Thanksgiving travel.
Oh, you bet.
But hopefully, because of the number of people who are either post-infection or a full series vaccinated, 3 shots,
right,
it won't be as bad as it was. And again, we never dropped. And so we're at levels that still put hospitals at risk in places, for example, like Michigan.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so if that's your threshold, which you need to determine whether endemic is or is not worrisome, we're at a threshold that you still need to continue to worry, and being flat isn't victory, and, it's not okay. And one of the more interesting things is again, just as the media has trouble figuring out whether a plateau is a surge or waning, they can't, but they have to have a sensational headline for clicks and eyeballs, and so they have to, distort what's going on here.
Okay.
What that means for Joe Biden and the economy are also going to be distorted.
Yeah, so, okay.
Right? U.S. jobless claims fall to just 199,000, the lowest level since 1969. Job numbers out this morning.
Really? Well.
Or, as Dale Edwards puts it on Twitter, the Biden economy sees jobless claims fall to the lowest level in 50 years.
What a disaster socialism has been for us.
Right. And so I'm going to leave you with one thing. My whole pundit round today was on the politics of despair.
Oh.
But I want to read to you
I don't even care anymore,
a Jamel Bowie article.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Which I think puts it a little bit in perspective. So what year is this?
This one.
All right.
2021.
Well, let me read you something, and you tell me what year.
All right. Yeah, I see.
All right?
Yeah.
As his first year in office comes to a close, an ambitious new president is on the decline. His legislative agenda has stalled in a fractious Congress. Voters are angry over inflation and other economic concerns. He's struggling to find his footing on the world stage. Allies and critics say the president and his party have made a major misstep, mistaking their successful defeat of an incumbent president for a decisive mandate. The results have been a flagging approval rating, disenchanted public opposition party with the wind at its back. If elections for Congress were held today, there's no question the president would lose out to the mounting backlash against his administration. What year is this?
It is this year. I don't know.
It is 1981.
What?
As the president heads into his second year, Hedrick Smith wrote in the New York Times Magazine, a lot of the magic is gone and the politics of optimism has fallen on hard times. Recession's hit with a force totally unexpected in the euphoric high tide of Reaganism last summer. His present headache, Smith continued, reflect the life cycle of the modern American presidency. Flashy freshman beginnings, sophomore slump, third-year recovery, or dazzling achievement, as the case may be.
Okay. Yeah.
The more you read of Smith's description of Reagan, the more familiar it sounds. It's as if there were a rhythm to the political process that not only ensures exaggerated tolerance in the honeymoon period, but also dictates a political downswing as each new president bogs down toward the end of his first year.
Wow.
Okay? So, again, that's the thermostatic response. And so the politics of despair means people will take the normal despair that comes in the president's party because then he becomes less popular than when he was elected, and you try to make some sort of political hay out of that. You see, my theory about what was going on in terms of how you should win was right. You should hire me for your next election. And all you do is read about that crap, and none of it's true, and you don't have to pay attention. It doesn't mean that the Democrats don't have work to do. They do. It's not automatic that you recover. But could Biden recover? Absolutely. Look at Ronald Reagan.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. Don't look at Ronald Reagan. But you can look at him as this example. Certainly, yeah. I mean, imagine just thinking about the mythos
Biden is putting 50 million barrels of oil in your gas tank.
Right.
Which is a lot, unless you have a really big car. So maybe have an escalator or something so you can take half of that. But the point is not that he's going to lower gas prices. That's a worldwide thing. He is coordinating with other countries, and he's looking like he's doing something. The jobless rate is better. The supply chain stuff is getting better. We talk about that relatively frequently on the show in terms of, empty canisters or containers at Long Beach or less. Here's a tweet from Molly Jonkfast from yesterday that I have in the pundit roundup. Here's the Walmart CEO thanking the Biden administration for helping fix some of the supply chain issues. That stuff gets out there. Things start to get better. Turns out Build Back Better will raise average taxes for incomes over $1 million. Okay. If your income is over $1 million, your taxes will go up by 3.2 percentage points.
Oh, man.
Joint Committee on Taxation previously estimated that BBB will cut average taxes for incomes over $1 million by 1.7 percentage points. So the richest are paying more, not less.
Oh,
and all of your despair about this doesn't do what it's supposed to, it's actually doing what it's supposed to.
Okay. Well, that is good news. I'm pleased to hear that. And good
There's
news.
Good news out there, So politically, take the advice of Oliver Willis.
All right.
We're talking about the despair of, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this, they're doing that. He says, have you heard Democrats talk about GOP book bans? Have you heard Democrats talk about GOP's genital inspections? No, you haven't. That's part of the problem. And he gives an example, not parody. Okay, this comes from the White House. Right. We're cutting thousands from your health care bill if they pass this president's plan. Thousands.
What?
Don't be talking about that. Talk about GOP book banning. Talk about GOP genital inspection. Sure. If you're going to have a culture war, then fight the culture war on terms that work. And if you want to be genteel about it, and you don't want to say fight the culture war, and you want to say discuss the issue, fine. But be clear. Let's discuss the issue. The GOP is all about book burning. Here are examples.
Yeah.
GOP are about genital inspections. Here are examples. Instead of running away from it, you ought to be talking about it.
Cheating in elections. Here are examples.
Right, exactly.
Why not? Yeah, that's true. We should be talking about that.
Right. Brendan Nyhan notes precisely the danger. Elite commitment among Republicans is weak and Democrats aren't prioritizing securing democracy. That's because decades of political science research tells us that democracy isn't sustained due to public's commitment to it. It's due to elite commitment to it.
Oh.
And when you don't have the elite on the Republican side, that is to say you have one party going fascist, that's why we have such a big problem. Nicholas Grossman notes, Democrats, what did you do when democracy was under threat? You fought each other for months and spent a lot of money, but you at least talked about it a lot, right? Drew attention to the problem, raised the salience? Nope. You told members to avoid the topic, follow the polls, and don't lead. That's a problem. That's why Oliver Willis is right. And that's why all the political consultants in Washington are wrong. And that's where the January 6th committee comes in. If they do their work properly, that's something to publicize, not avoid. Yeah. And so there's work to be done there and more stuff to come. That's my segment. Got to go. Okay. But thanks so much for listening. And hopefully you have a better idea of where we stand at the pandemic when Thanksgiving comes up. Yes. And we have no show Thursday, so I'll be back on Monday.
Right. Well, I know where we stand now. We stand in 1981, apparently, and look to that for a guide. Oh, by the way,
which if you're president isn't so bad.
Yeah. Afghanistan, big in the news, same time. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Well, plus not challenge.
Okay. Well, great. Thanks, Greg, and enjoy your Thanksgiving. And we'll check in with you again when it is Infrastructure Week again next week.
It's always Infrastructure Week now. Right. Take care.
Thank you. You do the same. Stay away from the hot spots of Connecticut. Wow. All right. Well, a lot to follow up with there. One of which is, I was looking at the charts. You'll see them later when we give you links to this Financial Times piece, which I think even if you don't subscribe to the Financial Times, you'll be able to view it once. I was able to open it once, and I think I have another Financial Times piece that I put away that was similar in nature, and then when I went back to look at it for the show, I couldn't open it up again. That's the way their firewall works. But I like we'll let you see an important piece of news about world health conditions once at least, and not hide it from you. But I was looking at the chart that we were discussing, and Greg was pointing out the skyrocketing rates of daily deaths per million residents in the Czech Republic, in Slovakia, together formerly known as Czechoslovakia, but also to a slightly lesser extent in Austria, and then Belgium and Germany, passing the what did we call it? The threshold of the UK there, the standard that we were using for judging how you were doing. But Czech Republic and Slovakia both spiking past 8 daily deaths per million residents. And of course, remember, they have several million residents. So, the death rate is is fairly high there. The daily deaths per million is a number that comes out in low digits, so it makes it look like, if you don't understand the metric, if you don't understand what you're measuring and the scale, it can sound like nothing. You can accidentally dismiss it as being, a small number. Oh, 8 deaths in Slovakia and 8 deaths in the Czech Republic. No, well, per million. And I guess just by way of reference, let's take a look, because they're going to be, let's see, what will bring them to the top of the chart? I'll have to do it alphabetically. But the Czech Republic, which goes by Czechia on the Worldometers charts, you're talking about, they have 10.7 million people. So if they're doing 8 deaths per million, they're talking, 80, 85 deaths daily. And we're so worried about how they're doing. Let me parse the numbers a little bit smaller. And sometimes when you get to smaller, more discrete political units, the numbers tend to be exaggerated because you're talking about a smaller number of people to draw from. So if just what would be just a few people, say, getting COVID in, if it was the same number in California, where the population is enormous, versus Delaware or whatever, or some of the smaller, even less populous states, Wyoming, the least populous state, that same number of people is a bigger chunk by far of the population. But so it's not a great comparison, but you try to normalize by talking about it in terms of per million residents. So this spiky looking, frightening chart of Czech Republic and Slovakia surging past 8 daily deaths per million, with Slovakia plateauing and perhaps on the way back down, but Czechia still rocketing up. So we don't know where they're going. They could be passing 8, 10, 12, 15. I just want to point out for you, I've been tracking daily new deaths per million population in the United States by state, which is a statistic I've had to set up my own spreadsheet to generate each night. Worldometers doesn't report it. I'm not exactly certain why. There's only a certain amount of information that they can report. I don't fault them for it. I can only calculate it because of the data they give me as it is. But they give me daily new deaths by state, and I turn it into, normalize it by per 1 million population. So we were just watching the charts and freaking out. Look at Slovakia. Look at the Czech Republic, over 8 and headed towards 10 daily deaths per million. My report last night for the top 10 states in the United States in new deaths per million for yesterday. Montana tops the list at 36 deaths per million, just to give you some idea of where we are. And, oh gosh, what's Europe? What is Europe? What lesson have they got for us, and what's in store? And, throughout this whole pandemic, we've been like, I don't remember what the number was, but for some reason, 6 weeks sticks in my head, but I'm not certain that that's the number. But we're just sort of, our numbers sort of lag behind us. The wave comes across the Atlantic somehow, and we end up getting what they got a couple weeks later. So they're having this enormous spike, but they don't have, I don't know. I don't know what to say, except that we've been, here we are plateaued and thinking, writing stories about, oh, it's all over. Everybody can go home and, go about their business, and we don't need masks. And don't worry, Jim Jordan already had it. Montana had 36 deaths per million yesterday. And that doesn't leave us off the hook. Everybody on the top 10 list has 8 or above deaths per million, which puts us right alongside the Czech Republic and Slovakia in that crazy chart, where they're out, they're vastly outpacing the rest of even the hotspots of Europe. So if it worries you that Czech Republic and Slovakia were doing 8 deaths per million the other day, or currently, the data, I wouldn't say it's fair to lay them side by side, because I imagine that with this much, this data here is in this chart going from October, November, and December, so they're probably doing 7-day averages, etc. And it's not the case that the 7-day average for Montana is necessarily 36. But I'll tell you, Montana is on that chart a lot. So anyway, for yesterday, deaths per million, everybody's freaking out about the 8 over there. Montana, 36. Maine, hi Bill, 21, just casually thought I would let everybody know that it's like 3 times the rate that we're freaking out about. Arizona, 16. Kentucky, 12. North Dakota, 12. Idaho, 12. By the way, any sort of weird pattern you're noticing about rural and vaccine uptake and redness? Okay. Where do we leave off? Idaho, 12. Oregon, 12. South Dakota, 10. Tennessee, 8. And Indiana, 8. Bottom of the list is oh my God territory when you're talking about what's going on in Europe. And just going back, like Monday coming out of the weekend was not quite so bad, just because, like I said, you're coming out of the weekend and the reports are lacking. But Montana was 19 deaths per million for Monday. Is that right? Yeah. And West Virginia, 17. Kentucky, 10. Oregon, 8. Minnesota, 7. Now we're getting finally below them. And then it drops off because of the lack of reporting over the weekend. South Dakota, 5. Idaho, 3. New Hampshire, 3. Michigan, 3. New York, 3. Prior to that, there's good days and bad days, but I don't think, I guess when we're talking about Sunday, the problem... I guess no, this would be last Friday. I don't even report it on Saturdays and Sundays because there are so few states actually reporting their numbers. Typically these days on Saturday, only about 20 states even bother to do reports. And Sundays, only about 16 of them typically will do reports. So I dropped that because doing a top 10 list from among 16, or even 20 states is kind of pointless. But last time we left off at the end of the previous week, same states keep popping up over and over again. Montana wasn't on it on last Friday, but Kentucky, North Dakota, New Mexico, Arizona, Idaho, Maine, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Oregon. You're starting to see repeat players. Last Thursday, Montana topped the charts again at 16. It's not 36, but it's still twice the number that's freaking us out over there. And again, same players. At first I thought the daily new deaths was not really telling me all that much because it had more to do with reporting dates than the dates on which they died. But long term, it has told me a lot more because I keep seeing the same states posting numbers in the top 10 over and over again. Thursday again. Montana, Idaho, New Mexico, West Virginia, North Dakota, Kentucky, Maine, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. You tell me what's going on, but you'll have to tell me after this 1 minute break. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We have a question, and I wish we had gotten it in with Greg, but perhaps we could talk about it offline or over the weekend or what, and see if we can get an answer. I am certain that there is a measure somewhere, but she is asking, are we measuring what percentage of current hospitalizations are COVID-related? And I am not certain who's measuring what where, but I can tell you that at least anecdotally, we keep hearing from ICU docs where they're saying things like, not only is our ICU full, but it's entirely COVID patients, or it's 90% COVID patients. Someone's keeping track of it, yes, but it's not a widely shared number, and maybe because it doesn't mean very much, like, say, nationwide for us, but in hot spots, it's very meaningful, and it will tell you, how much danger you're in if you can't tamp down on the numbers. So they are tracking it, and I just keep hearing the numbers discussed anecdotally as opposed to statistically. But someone must be doing that, and I'm sure it's statistics that they can generate, and I don't know why. It hasn't been offered to me through Worldometers or any of the other statistical monitoring services I've been watching, but maybe it ought to be. It's a good indicator. Just as it turns out, daily deaths per million population turned into a good indicator after all, if not necessarily anything useful about what's going on day to day. The trends of who's on the list over and over and over again are telling you things. I could sit here and read it to you forever because I've been tracking it for a very long time. But yes, it absolutely brings us the same states over and over and over again. And I don't know. I guess there's not a whole lot of talk. There hasn't been a whole lot of talk about what's going on in Montana and its consistent place in the top 10 of new deaths per million day after day after day. But now I'm just sort of curious, because we haven't talked about it. I'll go over to Worldometers, pop in on the U.S. statistics, and I mean, where is Montana in terms of deaths per million overall? They're not really high ranking. They're right in the middle, smack in the middle, 26. But I get 26th out of everything, 2,437 deaths per million population, which puts them right behind North Dakota, which also is on the list frequently. But yeah, they run hot and cold, but their winters are terrible. And then they seem to get everything back in line through spring and summer, and then they have Sturgis again, and then cold weather. And, well, to no one's surprise, an uptick in the cases, because in that sense, I guess it's still like flu. Anyway, I should see, I don't know, I guess they're surging of late, but you'd have to go back a ways. How far back until Montana hasn't been spotted in the top 10 list for days currently? Let's see, I left off with last Friday, the 19th. They're at the top of the list, number 1 on the 18th. They are number 6 on the 17th. They are number 3 on the 16th. They're number 2 on the 15th. And we're talking about numbers right here on the 15th. 10 deaths per million. 26 again on the 12th, number 1. Number 5 on the list with 13 on the 10th. Number 2 on the list with 13 on the 9th. Number 2 on the list with 7 on November 8th. So they're pretty consistently there. And the only days they're not is on days when they don't report, and that tends to be weekends, and there's not and I don't do those numbers anyway because the reports are so low. But yeah, I don't know. I guess they've been surging through November. I guess I should, it might be interesting to look at how they've moved through the rankings of total deaths per million population overall and see if they've been surging up. But I haven't been able to do that. Anyway, let's see. It's, I guess, to follow up on that and do a little bit more on the pandemic. I had a thread waiting to discuss with Greg at some point, but now I think we've covered more or less what I was interested in, that is to say the uptick in Europe. I had here this thread from a Dr. Lisa Iannattone, maybe? Iannattone. So, apologies for mangling the name. This, too, based off of a Financial Times piece about what was going on in Central and Eastern Europe. Let's see. She puts this way. I think many of us are wondering what in the world went wrong in Austria as opposed to Czechia and Slovakia or Germany. But Germany, of course, bordering Austria. Lots of cultural ties. Let's see. What did she say? Don't they have free rapid tests and N95 level masks? What explains the skyrocketing cases? We're looking at a chart here of daily new confirmed COVID cases per million. New cases. And Austria spiking way past the UK and past 1,200 new cases per million on a daily basis. That a 7-day rolling average. So she's asking, what's going on? What explains skyrocketing cases? Follow along for some answers from an Austrian, which I guess that means her. Or is she sharing someone else's answers? Let's see. Well, they're quoted here, so maybe it's someone else. She appears to be maybe Canadian, but talking to an Austrian. Let's see what they got here. But the too long didn't read version of what's going on in Austria and why cases are spiking beyond everybody else, way past the UK, way past the United States and 7-day rolling average, France, Italy, and Spain, etc. The TLDR, 8 of their 9 states, Austria is a federal republic like us, 8 of their 9 states dropped their mask mandates. Well, I guess that would explain it. First, Austria is a federal republic, and while most of the legislative and executive power lies with the federal government there, health and health care is unfortunately being administered and legislated upon by 9 states. And, wow, that will confuse things. 7 out of the 9 states, or Bundesländer, as they say, I guess, the legislatures, anyway, maybe that's what they call their legislatures. You know what? I don't speak German. But the city of Vienna, well, I guess it is a state. The city of Vienna is also a Bundesland, so that a state unto itself. 7 of the 9 Bundesländer have a conservative governor. The remaining 2, Burgenland and Vienna, are social democrats. The prime minister is also from the conservatives. The prime minister declared the pandemic over in July because he didn't bother to listen to the experts. And he wanted nice messages that framed him as the savior of the country. Oh, those Austrians in there need to be saviors of the country. And also this, like everything else in Austria, was done with what can we do to get the tourists to come to us in mind. Subsequently, 8 of the 9 states dropped their mask mandates. Getting strong Alberta vibes, she says about this as a Canadian. Vienna, though, didn't. They still had masks in supermarkets and on public transport and went back to FFP2 masks, I guess something like our N95s, as soon as cases started to surge. Vienna has also had a widely available PCR test system, the Everyone Gargles program. I don't know what that means, but okay. Under which you can pick up to 8 test kits per week for free. Gargle with a saline solution at home, and then drop them off at a supermarket and get the results in less than 24 hours. It's a different test. You gargle with saline solution, spit it out, and then they test. Gross. Anyway, Vienna introduced negative tests as a requirement for nightclubs in July and made lots and lots of efforts to get people vaccinated, including a vaccine boat that went up and down the Danube River. Wow, how exciting is that? And the Blue Danube, how fantastic. Waltzing its way up and down the river with vaccines to give out. 3 shots. It's a waltz. Remember, it's in threes. 3 shots. This is terrific. This sounds like a fun way to get vaccinated, to be honest. Meanwhile, in another state, Ober-Austria, because Österreich is German for Austria, right? Anyway, in that state, was the second worst affected. I guess that makes sense. And they had regional elections in September. The government wanted to win re-election, so it DGAF, didn't give a F, about reintroducing mandatory masks or even mentioning the pandemic until after they had been voted back in. Also, this Austrian says, our PM got caught in a corruption scandal in September. Whoop, I missed that one. And had to step down. He's now only a member of parliament. So he's still in office. He's just not the prime minister. And he's still very active behind the scenes. Okay, pardon me. Had to actually take a short break to sneeze, which means I think I have COVID. I don't think there's a lot of sneezing involved in that, but maybe I have the flu. Yeah. All right, I have nothing. There's just a lot of dust floating around. We're cleaning up. Don't get too excited. Anyway, also, this Austrian says, right, the PM got caught up in the scandal. He didn't resign from parliament, but he's not prime minister anymore. And he's still very active behind the scenes. He put pressure on the remaining conservative ministers to keep his message, which I guess was that everyone who's vaccinated will not be affected by any more restrictions. And that, he also blocked calls for lockdown, or what passes for lockdown over there, this person says is ridiculous, until triages had been introduced in the 2 worst affected states earlier this week. So they wormed their way right back into a pandemic. Back in Vienna, The Vienna government kept its messaging concise and to the point, telling people during the summer that COVID isn't over, stay vigilant, wear a mask, and get tested. And that's how the biggest city in the country where they're having such problems is currently the least affected place. Wild. The mask wars strike again. Remember when everyone thought this would be rampaging through cities because it was so much harder to do social distancing there? Yeah, well, the masks do wonders, it turns out. Bonus round, the doctor offers up. One thing I forgot, we have a far-right party, the FPO, that gets roughly 20 to 25% of the vote. They have been openly anti-vax and anti-everything, and their leader advises taking ivermectin. Bonus round 2, by the way, is why stop at ivermectin when you can liken vaccination to rape? What a great idea for the FPO. This Google Translate of this direct quote is the rule in the workplace, that is the vaccine requirement, amounts to a vaccination rape. Way to go, conservative Austrians. All right, so mystery of Austria solved. No mystery at all, actually. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. In this case, a lockdown. And ends here with the New York Times tweet from some days ago. Breaking news, Austria will go into nationwide lockdown on Monday. It also plans to impose a national COVID vaccine mandate, Europe's first. So, there you go. Glad to be able to share that one with you. Probably time to jump off of the COVID thing for now anyway. Though we've got more on, tangents about that to share over the next couple of days. All right. Oh, no, I got one more. At least one more COVID piece of news. It absolutely is required. And let's see if I can even turn it into two here. From the home front. And from a place where they've been doing relatively good statewide. California has taken things pretty seriously, but it's a pretty huge state. If you parse things more narrowly, I noticed this tweet the other day from the national correspondent from Yahoo News, Andrew Romano, pointing out that San Francisco County, where they are 76% fully vaccinated, have an indoor mask mandate, and have vaccine passports, they are looking at 4 out of every 100,000 residents hospitalized with COVID. In LA County, where they're only 64% fully vaxxed, but also have an indoor mask mandate, vax passports, etc., 7 per 100,000 are hospitalized. In Fresno County, there's only going to be 3 counties here, where they are but 54% vaccinated, and they have no mask or vaccine requirements. They are looking at 31 per 100,000 residents currently hospitalized. Gee whiz, I wonder what's going on. And by the way, this is accompanying, as an illustration, for the attached LA Times article that says, with hospitals full, Central California, where I guess Fresno is, because I'm not up to speed on my geography of California, but you probably are. I know what's in the north and what's in the south. So, Fresno, in Central California, with hospitals full, they are pleading to be able to send COVID-19 patients to L.A., where the hospitalization rates are lower and they presumably have room for it. Well, sorry, everybody. You're going to have to pay your F-around find-out tax before we allow you to relieve your hospitalization pressure by bringing your sick to the places where people did stuff to make sure they didn't get sick. But in reality, we aren't going to do things that way. They probably will accept them because they're Californians, man. Anyway, one more COVID item. I just can't pass this one up from the Daily Beast, even though they're trying to make me pass it up with pop-up ads. Get out of the way. I'm going to tell you this one. The headline says it all, but I'm going to continue to say it anyway because the body of the article is pretty fun too. 7 people from anti-vax doctors' COVID conference fall sick within days. What do you know? Michael Daly reporting this for the Daily Beast. That, the headline, subheader tells us, that includes Bruce Boros. I don't know the guy, B-O-R-O-S, who claimed, as a doctor, that ivermectin was keeping him healthy and he wanted to smack his own father for getting the vaccine. Only guess what? Now he's sick. All right. Well, so anyway, this was a doctor who actually not only pushing ivermectin generally, but was one of the people that said, "Oh, I've been taking it as a preventative, and I haven't got the disease, so it must be working." And I don't think they must not do statistics in medical school because, duh, I mean, the numbers we were talking about, even with the 48, nearly 50 million Americans having been affected and the 38, nearly 40 million who have recovered from the virus, I mean, there's 333 million of us. So a very small amount, relatively speaking, of Americans where the disease is rampant have actually got the thing. So let's say 333 million. What were we saying? So 50 million of us have had it, or nearly, and there are 333 million of us out there. So 15%. Oh, I probably could have just looked at the chart where they normalized the numbers per million residents, and that would have told me. But so 15% of Americans have gotten it. So, you know, that's a pretty large number and all, but that means 85% just haven't for whatever reason. I would venture to say that a very small number of that 85% who haven't gotten it are eating horse paste or taking ivermectin in any form, if you want to be more than fair to them, and probably telling themselves, I didn't get it because ivermectin. But probably 75% of Americans are not taking ivermectin and didn't get the virus. And, you know, like, do they not use medicine and science in medical school? Do they leave that part out for these guys? Anyway, if you want to make more fun of them, I'll facilitate that by reading you this article. To hear the fringe doctors who gathered, this is the part I can't believe they didn't make a bigger deal of, who gathered at an equine facility for the Florida COVID summit earlier this month. If they want us to stop calling it horse paste, by the way, they can't have their COVID conventions at equine facilities. But okay, why did they do that? I do not know. And it's linked here, the Florida COVID Summit. I'm going to go to their page, or I'm going to attempt to go to their page. And, it blocked the pop-up window. All right, let's see. Yeah, here's it's their old article about it. Fringe docs literally met at horse center to flog ivermectin. Can't make it up, as they say, as they said about this on November 9th, when they originally published. They're coming to the horse center for their thing. Now, on November 23rd, they're able to follow up and say 7 of the people who went to the convention have COVID. Anyway, to hear the fringe docs who gathered at an equine facility for the Florida COVID Summit earlier this month. Bad place to have it also. Ivermectin is as effective against the virus in humans as it is against worms in horses, which is what it's really for. I have been on ivermectin for 16 months, my wife and I, Dr. Bruce Boros declared at the end of the meeting at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala. I have never felt healthier in my life. Of course, 2 days later, the 71-year-old cardiologist fell ill with COVID-19, according to the organizer of the one-day gathering. One day, and they got them all. And 2 other people with direct knowledge. The organizer, Dr. John Littell, or Littell, Littell, I don't know, further reported to the Daily Beast that 6 others among the 800 to 900 participants had also tested positive or developed COVID symptoms within days of the conference. And remember, this is a conference of people taking ivermectin and other awesome cures as preventatives. They came to compare notes. How are you doing on your amazing miracle preventative? Oh, I'm doing great. I've never felt healthier in all my life. Next day, they all got COVID because somebody came there with COVID and none of the preventatives work. There you go. People are considering if it was a super spreader event, Littell said. In the next breath, he dismissed the very thought with an emphatic no, except the answer is apparently yes. Littell conveniently decided that those with COVID, what's your explanation for this, sir? Well, those with COVID were already infected when they arrived at the summit, where no masks or social distancing were in evidence. Now, how that's an excuse, I have no idea. He's trying to say they didn't catch it here. They already had it from somewhere else. But if they're coming to the conference because of their amazing work with preventive medicine, how did they already have it? It doesn't work. It's nonsense. These people are idiots. They should be thrown off cliffs. But don't take responsibility for doing that yourself. Contract it out, I guess. I don't know what to do. Let somebody else come do it. Let the Czechs and Slovaks come and throw them off cliffs for us. Anyway, I think they had gotten it from New York or Michigan or wherever they were from, he said. It was really the people who flew in from other places. It was a convention. That's how conventions work. They were going to fly in. And interesting admission here, too, right? Maybe we should have had some sort of conditions imposed whereby people were prohibited from traveling great distances and gathering in large numbers. Maybe that would have helped prevent the spread of the disease. What do you think? No, I think eating horse medicine will do it. Well, guess what? That doesn't do it either. Anyway, Little's added here, everybody so far has responded to treatment with ivermectin. Bruce is doing well. Boros remained seriously ill at his Key West home, so I don't know how well he's doing, according to people who know him but who asked not to be identified. One of them was Mr. Ed, by the way, who said, stop eating all my medicine. Boros himself did not respond to phone messages and emails because he can't, because he's sick in bed. However Boros is faring, there remains the question of why he became seriously ill in the first place if ivermectin is the wonder drug that the anti-vaccine crowd claims it is, rather than primarily a treatment for parasites and head lice in humans, as well as a horse dewormer. He had been taking the drug since the summer of last year for what he described as a personal research project, trying to turn into a horse. I hope to proceed with my ivermectin observational study quickly, he announced in a July 28th, 2020 Facebook post. It's working where it's being used around the world, except for me. A year later. He proceeded from that falsehood to some incendiary MAGA nonsense. Fauci is a fraud. Big Pharma is playing us for suckers. And he signs it, Dr. Boros. I guess he was tweeting that. Anyway, his hometown newspaper reported that the post by one of the Keys, the Florida Keys, most recognized doctors caused a Category 5 social media storm. Much of the reaction was negative. It breaks my heart that a town like this has made something so political and hateful, Boros told Florida Keys Weekly. What's wrong with people? I just want to help patients and keep them from dying. Not good. Hasn't worked. He reported administering ivermectin to a man battling COVID. Within 6 hours, he was talking without coughing, Boros was quoted as saying. Medical authorities say there is no evidence the drug protects or cures COVID. The FDA and the CDC warned that it could, in fact, be dangerous. The FDA famously tweeted this year, "You're not a horse, you're not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it." You remember what controversy that caused. But get this. Boros has remained so convinced of the drug's value that he put his 97-year-old father, Carl Arfa, on it along with himself. His father, sensibly, then decided to get something proven to work against COVID, the vaccine. Boros has this to say about him. He had been brainwashed. He got it. He didn't tell me. I was very upset. I wanted to give him a spanking. That's a little weird. He got both jabs. Arfa caught the virus, though, and he was 97, which officials say is still spreading because so many people refuse to get the vaccine. While the shot has proven to prevent serious illness and death in an overwhelming majority of those who get it, or then get infected, Arfa, like some elderly patients or those with underlying health problems, became critically ill from COVID. He fought on, as might be expected of a World War II vet who received a Bronze Star with the 271st Anti-Tank Regiment of the Fighting 69th Infantry. Nice. And helped liberate a concentration camp in Leipzig. Some additional biographical information here. Boros repeatedly made the 4-hour drive from Key West to his father's home in Boca Raton, administering intravenously whatever fluids he thought best. I think you should get some more detail about that. Boros last saw him on November 1st because his father finally did lose his fight with the virus 5 days later, hours before Boros attended the summit. My father passed away this morning from complications of COVID, he told the gathering. Boros wondered aloud whether he had made a mistake when he took his father off ivermectin following the jab. By the way, no reflection on whether he made a mistake saying, "Hi, everybody who's refused to get vaccinated in this gigantic conference at an equine center. I just came from a bedside of someone who died from COVID. Let's all shake hands and share a meal." And then 7 or 8 of them got COVID. But it totally came from New York or Michigan or wherever else. What planet are these guys on? Well, some of them aren't on the planet anymore, so I guess that's the answer. Anyway, he was so lost in untruth that he suggested the vaccine had actually contributed to his father's death. We're seeing astronomical numbers of deaths in people who have been vaccinated, particularly the older people, which has nothing to do with anything, but okay. Anyway, by the way, in his last days, did he give his father ivermectin? No, he took him off. How weird is that? Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Yeah, these guys are weird. So that is interesting. By the way, do you think I skipped a little part of this here when he tells the convention that his father passed away that morning from complications of COVID. Boros then wondered aloud whether he had made a mistake when he took his father off ivermectin following the jab. So that's pretty interesting. He decided to punish him with taking him off. I can't have bad results for my study. And then, of course, when he got COVID and was clearly, in danger of dying, he didn't give him the life-saving miracle drug that he insists can not only prevent COVID, but cure it when you get it. So that's kind of weird that he didn't give that to his dad, because if he did, and his dad died anyway, which he was, probably likely to, he was 97 years old and had COVID, you can't have a bad outcome in my study, Dad, so good luck. Hope you don't die from COVID, because that would make me look ridiculous when I travel to the COVID summit tomorrow. So I don't know. That just seems like bad news. Anyway, there's more about how stupid and crazy all these people are. But I am also interested in that other Daily Beast piece. Oh, I guess I must have closed it. I'm kind of interested in, is there any more detail about the weirdos who were going before we know that would now be ironic to read, because they didn't know that they were all going to get COVID yet when they were going to this big COVID summit. Although, again, if you go to a COVID summit, that's what you're going to get. I mean, maybe a T-shirt. I don't know. But also COVID. Anyway, like I was saying last night, really, they shouldn't have called it, they called it something else, I'm sure, but to call it a COVID summit in this report and then say, wow, they all got COVID. Bye, everybody. I'm going to the, what did I say yesterday? The trapdoor over a pit of alligators summit. Oh, no, I can't believe this happened to me. Well, this earlier report from earlier in the month, fringe docs literally met at horse center to flog ivermectin, also written by Michael Daly, and it is hilarious. Here's a picture taken, a still from the YouTube video of the conference of John Littell, MD, at the podium here, where, again, he's at the World Equestrian Center, which actually means that the podium not only has those words on it, but has a big, a logo on it, which is a big horse head. So you couldn't do worse for an ivermectin conference than someplace where the podia, I don't know, are going to have horses on them. It's not going to make you look good. They spoke at an equestrian center where horses have to be vaccinated because it could hold a big crowd. You see what I mean? That's the subheader here, and it's sort of mashing 2 points together. The horses at one of these equestrian centers have vaccine mandates, not necessarily COVID, but various other horse and cattle diseases that you don't want transmitted between very valuable horses. And so they have very strict vaccine mandates among horse owners and, well, not for the horse owners, but I mean, the owners are responsible for vaccinating their horses. Can't bring your stuff there. And of course, they're meeting at this place because it can hold a large crowd, but so can many other places, particularly in Florida, that they chose this anyway. Just basically tells you how dumb they are if you didn't get it from the ivermectin part. Anyway, the FDA, it starts out basically saying, look, it's with their tweet, again, you're not a horse, you're not a cow. But that did not prevent a group of fringe doctors who nevertheless advocate its use, ivermectins that is, against the virus from gathering on Saturday at the World Equestrian Center in Ocala, Florida. The event was organized by John Little, who has a family practice in the area. He told the Daily Beast that he chose the venue because it can hold a big crowd, and it was the site of Sequins and Saddles. Here we go. An evening with Governor Ron DeSantis last month. So like Mar-a-Lago or the Trump Hotel, there are favored venues. If you'll put on an event with Ron DeSantis, then I'll put my event on there too, because I'm a cultist and an idiot. Well, anyway, Little said he had not even thought of the horse connection because he's freaking dumb. Anyway, he says, it's a funny thing, he said. Little noted that DeSantis had sought his advice about masks last year. A sham, he recalled telling the governor. It's all just a show. And now they're all sick because they're effing dumb. These days, Little is more focused on ivermectin and is busy writing prescriptions for folks in other states who cannot get a local physician to do it. Is that okay? He's also continually writing medical exemptions for vaccine mandates, and that imparts an added twist to the venue he chose for the gathering. Horses arriving at the WEC, horses, must be accompanied by written proof, that is to say, a vaccine passport, that they've been vaccinated for equine herpes virus and equine influenza. What do you know? WEC Ocala takes horse and horse herd safety and welfare very seriously, the center's website says. But as for the people, F them! Ha ha ha! And don't try to steal my horse medicine either. Oh, by the way, you think they locked up their ivermectin at the WEC? Were they people trying to raid it? Let us in! We want the ivermectin. Give up your horse medicine, damn it. Anyway, I don't know. We'll see. The alarm went off again, which means I must have hit snooze on it instead. Let me make sure that's gone now. All right, won't bother us again until it's time for the end of the show. Anyway, the meeting was held in a large conference room whose podium is stenciled with a horse head. The featured speakers include, I would say it's more than a stencil, but anyway, it's very nice looking. Featured speakers included Dr. Pierre Kory of Wisconsin, Kory. He is a big-time advocate of ivermectin for human use beyond its approved applications for head lice and some parasites. He spoke to the gathering of what he likes to call Pharmageddon. Don't listen to this man. A PR campaign designed to destroy the latest in a long line of repurposed drugs that they've sought to destroy for decades, he said. Ivermectin is the one. He contended that the pharmaceutical industry was spooked by soaring sales of a drug cheap enough to be used on livestock. He praised Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers quarterback, whose positive COVID test led him to revealing that he is unvaccinated. Rodgers was placing his faith in ivermectin, then got effing sick because they're effing stupid. He said some sensational things, Kory continued. He's not confused about how to navigate the world right now. He's like, number one, we're giving billions to pharma. They try to attack these cheap drugs. He says, I have a strong belief in these cheap drugs. The vaccine in the end is relatively cheap too, by the way, but they don't want that. They want the monoclonal antibodies treatment after the fact, which is enormously expensive. But don't look for logic. They're morons. Among other speakers was Dr. Peter McCullough, or McCullough, perhaps, you know how that sometimes they pronounce that differently, a Texas cardiologist who until 6 months ago was vice chief of internal medicine at Baylor University Medical Center. His former employer is suing him for continuing to use his former title in media interviews. Baylor apparently does not want to be associated with somebody who has said such reckless things, as nobody under 50 has a reason to get the shot. He also claimed that the vaccine has killed 50,000 Americans, but no one has reported it. McCullough stood at the Horsehead podium and offered his cracked view of a pandemic in which COVID-19 has killed 700,000 of us. It's a battle of man versus the virus. That's true. But I think in many ways it's a battle of good versus evil. Well, that's not what you're here for. You're a doctor. That drew big applause, though, from the roughly 900 in attendance. I told Tucker Carlson that when I came off the set, he said, apparently referring to a Fox News appearance. Evil, in McCullough's view, is being those who advocate masks and vaccines and other proven ways to save lives. Good being people such as Carlson and himself, who have said masks and vaccines do not work, but ivermectin does. Anyone who attempts to block treatment for COVID-19 is participating in what is, in my view, an immoral, unethical, and, from a civil perspective, illegal activity, which is what you're doing, you effing moron. So, by your own standards, arrest him. McCullough said that the ultimate answer is upon us in the form of natural immunity. We just have to do nothing, which means we don't need doctors, which is why Baylor Medical Center fired you in the first place, and you should stop complaining about it. The war is over, McCullough said. No more masks. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Totally wrong. He went on, natural immunity is a way to break the grip of fear. We no longer need to be fearful with respect to COVID-19. Show your boldness. Show that you're not afraid. Is he among the several who got it? Anyway, I don't know. Do you want to read any more? They're crazy and stupid. That's the upshot of it. Just thought I would share all that with you. And then, I don't know, I guess we can move on to a couple of other fun and interesting things to read and discuss. Let's see. Oh, here's a fun follow-up. We'll just stick with the light stuff for now. Then I'm going to have to see what I can do I got to start thinking about what to do for Thursday and Friday. It's entirely possible that we just might not be able to get new stuff recorded for Thursday and Friday, what with the crowds anticipated to descend on our world headquarters later on. But, maybe we'll see what we can do. I still held out hope because there's a couple of things I really do want to share with you. But some of the things I'll sneak in now. How about this one from Vice News? Somehow, we don't know how, somehow the guy who tried to steal Arizona for Trump is now broke. That's the headline from Vice. Doug Logan, the CEO of Cyber Ninjas, says he's $2 million in debt. How is this possible? David Gilbert knows, because he's the reporter for Vice who wrote this, and we assume that he's telling us the truth. Everyone thought the Cyber Ninjas were in it for the money. The Republican-controlled Arizona Senate picked the Florida-based company to run the sham recount of votes in Maricopa County earlier this year, despite their having zero experience running election audits. The company's efforts were so amateurish that even the Republican-led Maricopa Board of Supervisors labeled them a bunch of grifters and con artists, and I guess they're not even good ones. But it turns out that even though a variety of conspiracy-loving groups raised almost $6 million to fund the audit, that money hasn't made its way to the Cyber Ninjas, which is great. This week, the company's CEO, Doug Logan, said that rather than making him rich, the sham Maricopa County recount left him $2 million in debt. That's almost $1 of debt for every one of the 2.1 million ballots that the Cyber Ninjas recounted during the bogus audit that was conducted over the space of 5 months earlier this year. Logan made the claim to Nick Moseder, I'm guessing at that pronunciation, a longtime election truther who has been spreading disinformation about vote rigging and other baseless election conspiracies for months on his social media channels, including a show he hosted on YouTube before he was banned from the platform. Because he's an effing idiot. Because he's effing stupid. Just the same thing applies here too. So I just have to point that out. If you believe this nonsense and or the horse paste nonsense, you're not worth speaking to. That's it. I'm sorry. There's other things you might want to do with people who believe that stuff. Don't talk with them and take them seriously about anything that could affect you in any way. And honestly, at this point in a pandemic, anything could affect you in any way. I wouldn't want to be around. Why would you want to be around the aerosolized droplets from the breath of a person who says they believe either one of these things? Don't do it. Honestly. All right. Where was I? Mositer, now on his Telegram channel, because he's banned from YouTube because he's effing stupid, recounted a conversation he had recently with Logan, which was effing stupid, I'm sure, the conversation, claiming that the Cyber Ninja's CEO has been left in deep financial trouble as a result of the Arizona recount. While many people got very rich off the Arizona audit, Doug Logan is over $2 million in debt with no other means of income, Mositer wrote. By the way, I mean, if the Cyber Ninjas guys didn't become very rich off the Arizona audit, I doubt that anybody else did. I understand that there were $6 million pumped into it, but if it didn't go to the CEO of Cyber Ninjas, where did it go? Who were the other people? And the answer is, it didn't go anywhere. I mean, it got parceled out, and some people got, $50 for counting votes one day, and some people got 500 votes for counting votes for a week or whatever, and got burnt that way. I mean, it went into the Cyber Ninjas' hands. It just wasn't enough money to cover the expenses of conducting the sham audit. But what's happening here, with this guy, Mositer, look, start from the fact that he's been kicked off YouTube because he's a effing idiot and a liar, right? So then his big thing on Telegram, where they, I guess, allow you to be a big effing idiot and a liar, is people got very rich off of it. Nobody did. He's just come and told you the one person who should have gotten rich off of this thing didn't. But standard conspiracy theory stuff is, people will be interested in my show, my stupid conspiracy theory show on Telegram, if I say people got very rich off of it, but not my guy who actually conducted the audit and was supposedly collecting all this money. But some other people did. Well, they didn't. But it's only a sexy story for conspiracy theorists if you say that they did. And who cares? I lie all the time anyway. So people got very rich and they cured COVID. But not my poor friend Doug Logan over here, $2 million in debt. Now, I believe he goes on to say he was anticipating more audits to make up for his losses and kept being reassured, don't worry about the money, America has your back. Well, America doesn't have your back. You are an effing idiot and nobody has your anything, front, back, side, or otherwise. And maybe your face to smack, but that's about it. He thought it would I'll make it up in volume. What I can't make up in actual professional performance, I'll make up by making up some things, I guess. Mositer also revealed that Logan's wife gave birth to the couple's 12th child recently. How did I get in debt? I got 12 kids. I can't understand my debt situation. Could be that. Could have something to do with that. By the way, do you know what causes pregnancy? I'm not certain that you do. And, I have some bad news for you, sir. The way to stop having so many children, you're not going to like it. I mean, because presumably it sounds like you like the other thing a little too much. But there are ways to do that and not okay. Anyway, that wasn't supposed to be the topic. But anyhow, he thought he'd make it up in volume like he does with his family. Right. None of these kids love me, but I can make it up in volume, I guess. I personally think it's a tragedy that Doug Logan has sacrificed months with his pregnant wife and 11 kids, now 12, to put his business and reputation on the line, Mositer wrote. That was his business. He said, I pitched for the business. He asked for this job. I don't know what the big tragedy is. I personally think it's a tragedy that he pitched work, got the job, won the contract, and still has no money. I personally think it is not a tragedy. Never mind the fact that it was also bogus work. All of that work, which was fake, risk and sacrifice to have come out the other side being called a traitor and to be $2.1 million in debt with a business whose reputation will forever be branded right-wing conspiracy company. And it didn't help by going on the right-wing conspiracy show to clear his name. By the way, the debt just increased to $2.1 million. That was, a minute ago, it was $2 million in debt, almost as much as $1 per ballot of the 2.1 million ballots they counted. But now it's 2.1, so it made it to $1. Inflation. It's killing everybody. The news of Logan's claimed financial ruin will come as a surprise to many and a thrill to several others, given that back in July, Logan himself issued a press release listing the donors who collectively had coughed up $5.7 million to fund the charade. Recently released Senate account records show that the recount cost $9 million before the cost of Cyber Ninja's involvement is taken into account. I don't even want to know how the accounting works on something like this. From the beginning, Logan and his company were widely ridiculed, and it continues today, and mocked for indulging conspiracy theories and for the shambolic way the recount was conducted. You should have been recounting your money, you dumbass. At the same time, however, Trump supporters were willing to donate large amounts of cash to fund what they believed was a process that would somehow overturn the 2020 election results, though that was never legally possible. In the end, the Cyber Ninjas report found that President Joe Biden won Maricopa County by more votes than the official count said. So I'd like to measure his debt in terms of the extra votes he gave to Joe Biden. I would say, I don't remember what the margin was, but somebody can figure out how much money he spent giving per vote to help Joe Biden's margin instead. Well, anyway, it wasn't long before Cyber Ninjas and Logan were the ones being attacked, with the CEO claiming he was inundated with messages from Trump supporters blasting him for, quote, not doing enough to overturn the election. How sad. He put himself out there and lost all his money and effed up the count and got it backwards, and now everybody hates him. That is a tragedy. The audit was funded initially by $150,000 from the Arizona Senate. Does everybody remember that? That stuck with me. The Arizona Senate said the audit will cost $150,000. It cost $9 million. Again, why did they make this mistake in estimating how much it would cost to do the audit? Because they're effing stupid. The world is filled with extraordinarily dumb people, and they're very powerful. That's my conspiracy theory. Everybody send me money, and then I'll lose it. Anyway, the audit was initially funded by $150,000 from the Arizona Senate, which also covered the cost of renting the venue for the recount, the Veterans Memorial Coliseum in Phoenix, and the security required to protect the ballots around the clock. But the vast majority of the funding came from right-wing figures, which means it's not a legit audit, so you can't listen to them no matter what they find, who had embraced the big lie and conspiracy theories about how the election was stolen. People like MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, Overstock.com founder Patrick Byrne, and pro-Trump lawyer Lynn Wood were all involved, either giving money towards the recount or helping get members of the public to donate to the fundraising effort, stealing other people's money. Logan's revelation that he'd been left in millions of dollars worth of debt will likely raise questions about where all that money has gone. But it seems that some people aren't done donating money to this cause. Mosader reported that many people had contacted him about where they could donate money to help Logan. And Mosader probably told him, give it to me. I'll make sure he gets it. Logan reportedly told Mosader that people should donate to the fundraising campaign established by Christina Bobb, the One America News reporter who was given unfettered access to the recount when reporters from other outlets were barred. And they should also give her lots of money. No journalistic conflicts of interest involved here. Christina Bobb's fund would be the best one to use, since the other organizations have mostly moved on to other things or simply have not been willing to be transparent, Logan told Mosader. Logan did not respond to Vice News' request for comment on his financial situation, but an automatic email response said he was currently out of the office celebrating the birth of my latest daughter. So, okay. Logan's personal financial situation has also been in the news lately. Last week, the Sarasota Herald-Tribune reported that on January 25th, Logan cleared a 30-year mortgage on his $455,000 house. less than 4 years after taking out the loan. The report also highlighted that this was the same date that his company's $100,000 emergency pandemic relief loan was forgiven by the government. I think there's something more to be investigated there, but that's the end of the article. So, yeah, maybe they ought to check out where that money went and why he was given that much in pandemic relief anyway, and whether he just pocketed it and used it to pay off his mortgage, which is a good idea. I'm glad his mortgage is paid off if he's now also $2 million in debt. I'm not certain where the debt is from, but something, 12 children, and I don't know what to tell you. It's not looking good for him, and that's a good thing. I'm glad. He should be suffering. He's done some very awful, stupid things. All right, let's see. Other items up for discussion in the few minutes we have left. Small bore stuff. How about this Thanksgiving news? I saw yesterday Bobby Lewis of Media Matters for America picking up on this theme. I didn't even know it was one, but I guess it did. Is this? I can't recall whether this is an old screen cap from the election or whatever, but anyway, Bobby commenting here. If you told me this didn't happen, I might have believed you until I saw the clip again this morning. The clip here illustrated with a screen grab from the video identifying, I guess this is a Sunrise, Florida Trump rally, and there's no date indicator here, but at any rate, at some point he must have told this crowd, according to the Chiron on Fox News, Trump vows Thanksgiving name won't be changed. So you all know about that widespread, often talked about conspiracy by liberals and probably socialists to change the name of Thanksgiving to I hate everything giving. I don't know. I'm not certain what they would accuse liberals and socialists of being interested in changing the name from, but at any rate, he promised everybody, he vowed that Thanksgiving's name won't be changed. So, phew, we're all safe. You can all say Merry Christmas again, plus also Thanksgiving, because the name won't be changed. Frankly, I would have believed that he would have tried to change the name of Black Friday before he changed the name of Thanksgiving, or thought someone else would, but there you have it. I didn't even know that it was a thing, and sometimes the level of crazy can still surprise you. You think you're over it, but I guess not. Okay, let's see. Other small bore items I think probably deserve some discussion. Oop, this one we already did. Where else can we go with this stuff? Oh, right. We talked yesterday about the network of nonprofits that were moving money around for Trump and for his election efforts, and hopefully got you interested in reading more about that. We don't have time to squeeze any more on that in there, but let's squeeze in another story about grift, because why not? This one from the Texas Tribune. We'll just at least get it on the record for you. Texas has raised $54 million in private donations for its border wall plan. Well, that sounds like a bad idea anyway, and I didn't realize Texas was mounting its own effort, but I guess Greg Abbott figured there was a way to grift more money off of people. They raised $54 million in private donations, but here's the weird part. Almost all of it came from this one billionaire. Which one? This one. Timothy Mellon, who I guess lives in Wyoming. The Wyoming-based grandson of banking tycoon Andrew Mellon. He is responsible for nearly 98% of the donations to Texas's border wall fund. How interesting. James Barragan and Carla Astudillo are the authors of this piece for the Texas Tribune. So there you have it. If you ever wonder what happened to Andrew Mellon's banking fortune, the answer is that Timothy Mellon is busy frittering his part of it away from up in Wyoming, giving almost $50 million, I guess, to a border wall grift fantasy that will be stolen by politicians, Greg Abbott in particular. An out-of-state billionaire who has previously bankrolled attempts to defend controversial immigration laws is responsible for nearly all the donations to Governor Greg Abbott's $54 million border wall fund. How much of it? Well, a member of one of America's richest family dynasties, if you're listening in the UK, Timothy Mellon, contributed nearly 98% of the fund's total donations when he donated $53.1 million in stock to the state in August, according to public records. Mellon is the 79-year-old grandson of banking tycoon and former U.S. Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, who would be turning over in his grave, except, I don't know. It's not really possible to do. Anyway, before Mellon's donations, Abbott's private fundraising campaign had stalled at about $1.25 million around mid-August, 2 months after its launch. A drop in the bucket for a project with a price tag estimated in the billions of dollars. Yes, so is $50 million a drop in that bucket. But anyway, on August 27th, the state website that tracks donations to the crowdfunding effort said the fund had jumped nearly $19 million, and by the end of the month, it topped $54 million, and donations have since stalled again. That's one of the problems with a gigantic donation like that, as everybody says. Mellon will take care of it over here. So, anyway, hope that continues to stall, and hope more doctors who went to the stupid COVID convention continue to get COVID, and I hope we hear about them losing their battles, and soon, because the sooner that happens, the better. Quite honestly, I still think the best thing that could happen to the country, and our one true butterfly effect moment that we managed to avoid, Donald Trump should have died from COVID when he contracted it in October of last year. Imagine the impact that would have had. People would have finally taken it seriously. It would have been the biggest thing since President Basketball taught us what to do.
From networksradio.com, you have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Anyway, plenty more to cover, of course. Justice Putnam comes next with the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and I don't know what we're going to do for the rest of the week, but if we don't see you, we'll see you next week. Do stay tuned, though, because it's time for Justice to take over the microphone and catch up with everything that was serious and needed attention, but which I ignored in favor of making fun of people.